It all started on an ordinary afternoon in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Birds chirping, kids riding bikes, everything seemed peaceful. But just as a delivery truck rolled to a stop in front of a modest home, things took a wild turn. Enter the self-proclaimed ruler of the block, an HOA board member known by neighbors as Karen. She stormed out of her house, fuming, not because of loud music or trash cans left out, but because the delivery guy had parked in her line of sight. Her view, she said, was being blocked, and she wasn't having it. What she didn't realize, though, was that this wasn't just any delivery guy. He was actually an off-duty sheriff, still in full uniform, dropping off a package to his elderly mother who lived nearby. Calm, respectful, and just doing a favor for family, he definitely didn't expect the confrontation that followed. Karen marched right up, words flying faster than anyone could keep up, and then, right there in broad daylight, she slapped him. Cameras caught everything. The neighbors watched in disbelief. Now, what happens next? Let's just say things escalated quickly. Did Karen realize her mistake too late? And how did the sheriff respond? Stick around. This story takes a turn you won't see coming. Neighbors say this wasn't the first time Karen had caused a scene. She had a reputation, constantly patrolling the block, clipboard in hand, always finding something to complain about. From lawn heights to mailbox paint, she ran the HOA like it was her own private kingdom. But today, she took things way too far. The slap wasn't just shocking. It was caught on a doorbell camera just across the street. And while some folks might have tried to de-escalate, Karen doubled down, yelling about how the truck was ruining the view she paid for. Meanwhile, the sheriff, calm but clearly taken aback, didn't even get a word in before the neighbors started gathering. People peeked through blinds, some came out onto porches. They'd all seen Karen lose her temper before, but never like this. One neighbor, who didn't want to be on camera, later said, "We've all had our run-ins with her, but this was different." And still, Karen had no idea who she was dealing with. She didn't notice the badge, didn't recognize the uniform. To her, he was just another rule breaker parked in the wrong spot. But there was something else no one knew yet. This sheriff had a bodycam running too. What it captured, that's where the story starts to unravel, and not in the way Karen expected. As more neighbors stepped outside, whispers spread fast. Some pulled out their phones, not just to record, but because they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Karen, still fired up, started accusing the sheriff of trespassing and harassing a resident. She even threatened to call the police, completely unaware that the person standing in front of her was the police. The sheriff stayed calm, barely saying anything, but the way he stood, quiet, firm, made a few neighbors start to realize something was off. One neighbor, Marlene, who lived across the street and had clashed with Karen over a fence issue, quietly stepped over. She leaned toward Karen and said, "You might want to take a closer look at his uniform." But Karen waved her off, still too angry to notice. Meanwhile, the sheriff tapped his chest, activating the bodycam audio. He still hadn't identified himself, maybe trying to give her a chance to cool down. But Karen wasn't backing down. She demanded he leave immediately and started throwing around HOA rules she clearly misunderstood. At the same time, a separate conversation was unfolding at the end of the block. A group of residents, tired of Karen's behavior, began quietly talking about how this could finally be the moment to take action. But no one knew just yet how serious things were about to get, or that the footage recorded that day would soon go viral. Karen's voice was getting louder, sharper, echoing down the street. The sheriff still hadn't said much, just stood there, hands steady, eyes locked on hers. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't move toward her. He simply asked her once, calmly, "Ma'am, are you done?" That's when Karen's expression shifted, confused, like she was starting to sense something wasn't right. But it was too late. The bodycam had recorded everything, and now a small crowd had gathered. Some were recording on their phones. Others just stood frozen, unsure what was going to happen next. Then came the moment that changed the energy on the block. The sheriff slowly reached into his back pocket, not for a weapon, but for his ID. He held it up, letting the badge catch the light. "Sheriff's Department," he said, voice low but clear. The silence that followed was chilling. Karen stepped back, suddenly unsure of herself, eyes darting between the badge and the faces around her. But just when it seemed like the confrontation might end, another voice cut in, an HOA board member who'd come out to see the commotion. Instead of diffusing things, he backed Karen up, accusing the sheriff of causing a disturbance and demanding he file a formal delivery notice with the HOA next time. That only made things worse. The sheriff slowly turned toward him, and what he said next. That's where the story hits its breaking point. The sheriff turned to face the board member, expression still calm, but now with a sharper edge. "So you're telling me," he said, "that delivering a package to my mother, on public property, is a violation of HOA policy?" His tone wasn't angry, but it carried weight. The board member hesitated, eyes flicking to Karen, clearly second-guessing himself. But before he could respond, another voice joined the mix, from behind the sheriff's truck. Out stepped an elderly woman, cane in hand. It was the sheriff's mother, and she'd heard the whole thing from her porch. "He's not just a delivery guy," she said, steady despite her age. "He's my son, and he's been helping me every week since my surgery. You people should be ashamed." Her voice cracked, not with anger, but with hurt. The crowd grew quiet again. But then came the twist no one expected. Another neighbor, one of Karen's few allies, walked up with a clipboard of her own. "Actually," she said, flipping through papers, "their asterisk is asterisk a complaint on file from last week. Someone reported suspicious activity involving a man in uniform coming around too often." That's when the sheriff's face changed. His eyes narrowed slightly. "So someone's been watching my mother and filing complaints under false pretenses?" he asked, already knowing the answer. The mood shifted. This wasn't just a neighborly dispute anymore. It was personal, and it was about to get serious. The tension was thick in the air. Karen's face had gone pale, and the board member looked like he wanted to disappear. The sheriff didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "That complaint," he said, "is now part of an ongoing investigation." He glanced at the woman holding the clipboard. "Filing a false report against a law enforcement officer and targeting a senior citizen. Those are serious offenses." Karen opened her mouth to argue, but this time the words didn't come. The neighbors who once stayed quiet started speaking up. Molly mentioned how Karen had threatened to fine her for planting unauthorized flowers. Another neighbor said he was told to move his car from his own driveway. It was like a switch had flipped. People weren't afraid anymore. Then came the final blow. The sheriff turned to his mother. "I'm requesting a formal investigation into harassment against you." He looked back at Karen and the board member. "And I'm submitting the bodycam footage as evidence." But just when everyone thought it was over, the sheriff's mom added quietly, "There's something else I didn't tell you." She reached into her walker pouch and pulled out a letter, an anonymous HOA notice split under her door the week before. No name, no return address, just one line. Asterisk, "Maybe it's time you moved out." Asterisk, the sheriff read it, his jaw tightening. The story wasn't just about a slap anymore. It was something deeper, and far from over. In the days that followed, the HOA was shaken up. Multiple residents filed formal complaints not just about Karen, but about the entire board's pattern of behavior. The anonymous letter to the sheriff's mother became the final straw. With the footage, witness statements, and history of aggressive HOA tactics, an external review was launched. Karen quietly stepped down, and the board member who backed her resigned soon after. The sheriff never pressed charges for the slap. He said he just wanted peace for his mom and the neighborhood. But the message was clear. Respect goes both ways, and a uniform doesn't make someone less human. The neighbors who once kept their heads down started showing up to meetings, demanding real change. The community slowly began rebuilding trust, one conversation at a time. As for the sheriff and his mom, they continued their weekly routine, only now, with more than a few friendly waves from down the block. The doorbell footage never made it to the news, but it spread just enough online to remind people everywhere, you never know who you're talking to, and kindness is always the better choice. What started as a simple delivery ended up exposing the cracks in a quiet community and brought the light it needed.